Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder what actually happens when you become aware that you're dreaming? This new study dives deep into those fascinating moments. So imagine this, you're in a dream full of crazy stuff happening, colors everywhere, maybe even flying, but then suddenly you realize, wait a minute, this isn't real, I'm dreaming. That moment of realization is called lucidity, and scientists are super curious about it, especially when people can prove they're lucid. This study wanted to understand the nitty-gritty of how that happens, what it feels like, and how it changes the dream. The researchers here looked at 22 signal verified lucid dreams. Now, what does signal verified mean? It means these weren't just people saying, oh, I think I was lucid, they could actually prove it. They did this by having participants perform specific eye movements inside the dream to signal to the researchers outside they were lucid. Think of it like a secret code from the dream world to the awake world. They then interviewed these people in super detail about their experience from the very first moment of the dream all the way through to waking up. They wanted to map out the entire journey of becoming and being lucid, not just a single moment of realization. Dreams are weird and wonderful, right? They happen all inside our heads without us really interacting with the outside world. They're a great playground for scientists to explore consciousness. Lucid dreaming, or LD, is especially interesting because it's like a special type of dreaming where you gain metacognition. That's a fancy word that basically means thinking about your own thinking. In LD, you're aware that you're dreaming, you might even be able to control things a bit, and sometimes you can remember things from your waking life. This is huge because it suggests that some smart thinking skills we have when awake might still be working when we're asleep and dreaming. The tricky part is that scientists have had mixed results when studying lucid dreams. This might be because they were treating lucidity like a simple on or off switch. Are you lucid or are you not? But the researchers here suspected it's more complex. They thought maybe the moment you realize you're dreaming is different from the whole period of being lucid. Also, dreams aren't always super clear. Sometimes they're blurry or change really fast, so they needed a way to capture all these subtle changes and feelings. That's where their special interview method comes in, Micro-Phenomenological interviews. It's designed to get super detailed descriptions of subjective experiences. It doesn't just focus on what you saw or did, but how you experienced it. They asked participants to walk through their dreams moment by moment, paying attention to everything from confusion and curiosity to that final realization. Okay, so how did they do this research? They worked with people who already knew how to lucid dream and brought them into a sleep lab. These participants took naps, and during REM sleep, which is when most dreaming happens, they were given subtle cues like little flashing lights or sounds. The participants' job was to try and become lucid, and if they did, they had to perform a specific eye movement pattern to signal it. Even if they just thought they were lucid dead signal, then when they woke up, they were interviewed. They also told participants things they might dream about, like false awakenings or dreaming about the sleep lab, to prime them. Pretty clever way to make the dreams more interesting and easier to study. After the nap session ended, they'd wake the participants up briefly to get their initial report and then let them go back to sleep if possible. The goal was to catch those lucid moments live and then discuss them in detail later. Now, the interviews themselves were key. They weren't your typical chat. The interviewer guided the participant to reconstruct the dream step by step from the very beginning through any moments of doubt leading up to lucidity, then the lucid part itself, and then how it ended. They paid close attention to those moments just before lucidity emerged, and if any of those external cues were noticed. They even asked how sure they were about different parts of their memory. They ended up analyzing 22 of these signal-verified lucid dream episodes. Some were typical lucid dreams, while a few were a bit unusual, where people signal but don't actually feel lucid in that moment. This kind of detail is gold for understanding the variability. So what did they find? Well, it turns out lucid dreams are way more varied than we might think. The timing of lucidity could be all over the place. Sometimes it happened right at the start of the dream. Other times it only popped up near the end just before waking. The time spent in a lucid dream could be just a few seconds or much longer. But what's really interesting is what happens before lucidity. This is what they call pre-lucidity. Most of the time, people weren't just happily dreaming away. They were often experiencing something that didn't feel quite right. They identified different pathways leading up to lucidity. One common one was curiosity-driven exploration. People noticed something odd or puzzling and started actively investigating it. This is like a detective phase in the dream. Another pathway was distress-driven. Someone felt scared or anxious, and that intense emotion eventually made them realize that this couldn't be real. Sometimes people had a sense of near awareness from the start, almost like they already suspected they were dreaming. And then Therese, the abrupt shift, where suddenly, boom, you're lucid with no clear build-up. The realization of lucidity itself also varied. It could be a sudden flash of insight or a more gradual dawning. It wasn't always a clear thought like I am dreaming. Sometimes it was more of a feeling, a subtle shift in awareness. What actually triggered lucidity also differed. It could be actively doing a reality test, like counting your fingers, or trying to push your hand through a wall. It could be noticing a mismatch, like a scientist being in your dream bedroom or a talking dog. Sometimes it was realizing your own body felt weird, or your embodiment in the dream was strange compared to feeling your physical body in bed. And yes, sometimes those external cues like the light or sound actually helped trigger lucidity. What's fascinating is that after becoming lucid, experiences also varied a lot. Some people entered what they called explorer mode, actively engaging with the dream world, doing amazing things. Others entered observer mode, just watching and reflecting calmly. Then there were more unstable states. Sometimes lucidity was brief and overshadowed by distress, leading to an escape mode where the person just wanted out. And in some cases, lucidity was so fleeting that it led directly to waking up. Now here is something really important. The study found that the feeling of being awake while actually asleep is a thing. 3 of their participants signaled in REM sleep but felt like they were fully awake. This highlights that our subjective feeling of being awake or asleep can sometimes be at odds with what our bodies are actually doing. This is super important because it means we need to be careful about how we define lucidity and how we interpret our own brain activity during sleep. It's not always as simple as it seems. So what does all this mean for us? First, it tells us that lucid dreams aren't all the same. They're complex, dynamic experiences with different phases and different feelings. The period before lucidity is really important, often filled with curiosity or unease. It's not just blank space before the aha moment. This suggests that paying attention to subtle feelings of anomaly or curiosity in your dreams might be a pathway to lucidity. Scientists might need to look beyond just asking, "Are you dreaming?" and start asking, "What does your dream feel like?" Lucidity itself can also be a gradual process, not just a single switch. Sometimes it's a mix of realizing you're in a study, realizing you're in bed, and then finally realizing you're dreaming. It's like layers of awareness building up. This is super relevant for understanding how our minds come to understand themselves, especially during sleep. They also found that lucidity isn't always about thinking, "I am dreaming." Sometimes it is a more background awareness, a non-verbal sense of being lucid. This is like having a constant sense of awareness without necessarily having an explicit thought about it. Imagine being aware you're in a dream, but you don't need to say it to yourself. The study also shows that your feelings and sense of control also play a big role. If you are scared in a dream, being lucid might not immediately make everything happy and controllable. It can be a struggle to manage those emotions even when you know you're dreaming. This means that simply becoming lucid doesn't automatically give you superpowers. It's a more nuanced experience. And those eye signals researchers use to verify lucidity. Turns out they're not just passive markers. They can actually change the dream experience. Sometimes they help wake you up. Other times they're just part of the dream itself. This shows that the tools we use to study dreams can also influence them. Now, like all studies, this one has some limits. It was done in a lab setting, so maybe natural dreams are different. The interviews happened a little while after the dreams, which can affect memory. And they only studied episodes where people did become lucid, so we don't know as much about the dreams where people didn't. But overall, this study is a huge step forward. It shows that lucid dreaming is complex, dynamic, and full of different internal experiences. It's not just a simple binary state. By using these detailed interviews, they've given us a much richer picture of what it's like to wake up inside your dream. This is super useful for understanding consciousness, its self-memory, and how our minds work when we're not fully awake. Future researchers can build on this to better understand how people become lucid and maybe even help more people experience it. This research truly unlocks a window into the dreaming mind. It reminds us that even in sleep, our brains are doing incredible, complex things. What do you think about these findings? Are you a lucid dreamer? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this breakdown helpful, please hit that like button and subscribe for more mind-bending science. Thanks for watching RUBIN'S Mind Lab.